Hey folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. So we do these segments called Young Conservatives. We want you to know the future of the conservative movement. There are young people out there that actually believe in smaller government and things like that. And so I was introduced to. I met this gentleman here sitting next to me. I guess at the Greene County Republican Committee last week. And was talking with Anita Wells, who's the chairman of the Greene County Republicans, and we talked about doing a Young Conservative segment with this man sitting next to me. His name is John Williams. John, how are you, sir?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for having me on, Paul.
Yep, absolutely. So, first of all, John Williams, a name like that, you're going to hear about, obviously, the famous composer all your life, right?
Yeah. I wish I wrote all of his pieces.
yeah. Don't we all? But man, they are fantastic. Anyway, so this. I'm going to give you the floor because this is the Young Conservative. So we kind of ask the same boilerplate questions. But how did you get a conservative worldview?
Yeah. So it started first. I grew up in a conservative household with parents that worked hard for a living. I saw them work day in, day out, just trying to make a living, provide for me and my brother. And so that made an impact on me. But I think it was the 2008 and 2012 elections when I really started paying attention. So 2008, I was in the 6th or 7th grade. I didn't really know what was going on. I knew my parents wanted John McCain to win. So that's what I went along with. But by 2012, that's when I really started listening to not only what they were saying, but why they were saying it and what was the reasoning behind their positions. And so 2012 was really formative for me, listening to these completely polar opposite positions, because I really think that's when conservative and liberal really got to the polar opposite on the spectrum is 2012. And just asking myself, what kind of America do I want to live in?
Yeah.
And it was an obvious choice, a conservative, smaller government. And from there on, I've been involved with the Greene County Republican Party, now living in Craighead, joined the Craighead Republican Party committee, and just trying to make at least somewhat of a small difference.
Yeah. No, and I think that's really good. In the 2012 elections, that was, of course, you have Mitt Romney, you have Barack Obama. You have Barack Obama who's saying, if you have a business, you didn't build that. And then you had Mitt Romney, who was certainly more pro-business. Of course, now we know a lot more about Mitt Romney. That is pretty interesting.
He's not as conservative as he said he was.
Of course not. And he could have won. He could have won if he would have actually treated what happened in Benghazi for what it was and brought it up during the debate. But he didn't do that. So when you hear the word, we're talking about John Williams, Young Conservative. When you hear the word conservative, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So to me, means a lot of different things. It's more than just a belief. It's like you said, a worldview. It's a lens by which I look at the world. It's a belief that we were given natural rights by God, and it's the government's responsibility to stay out of our rights, to stay as little as possible. We should have the freedom, the liberty to pursue our dreams without government intrusion. So it's a smaller, limited government for the individual to pursue their dreams, their desires, take chances, make mistakes, and try again. It's hard to do that if you got an overreaching government that is trying to make decisions for you in your life. So it's a smaller government, but I also think there's a moral argument you may be made for conservatism, especially in the context of a capitalist society. A conservative capitalist country is going to result in the most wealth growth for all classes, the lower, the middle, and the upper class. You hear Democrats talking all the time about wanting to create social programs to help the lower class. But the best option for the lower middle class is to create an environment without the government being involved, so that they can take those chances and try making a name for themselves, make a living for themselves without the government being so involved in their life. So I think there's a moral argument you can be made that a conservative capitalist country is going to result in the most wealth growth for all individuals in a society, rather than a more socialist, hands-on government approach.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So, I would even kind of expand on that. The opposite of that would be dependency on the government, for these basic, basic things. And so the question would, is there any realm where dependency is immoral? It would be my question. And I think the answer is yes. Obviously, I believe in if you can't really help yourself, if you truly can't help yourself, then okay, we've got a program for that, right? Like there's an app for that. But at what point does, and this is, when I was a liberal in college, and a little bit right out of college, I didn't think these things through. You think, okay, well, the Democrats, they're just wanting to help people. But at what point does that help actually hurt individuals? I was watching this documentary, I think, on Netflix a couple of years ago called Poverty, Inc. If you haven't seen this, I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but it's fantastic. You guys listening should check it out. But it has to do with the fact that all these non-governmental organizations are essentially an entity, an industry in and of itself. So there's something bad that happens in a country, earthquake, tsunami, something. Okay, that we initially get there to help people, but then those people are donated. Those organizations never leave, and in often cases, these third world countries that did have some form of economy. They did have some form of businesses and entities. They never recover. Tom's Shoes. Tom's Shoes is a great example of this. You buy a pair of shoes and they say they'll donate a pair to a needy country. Well, the shoemakers in these countries, these third world countries, when the Tom's Shoes truck gets there and drops off a bunch of free shoes, then all of a sudden, your businesses are, completely, their business is gone overnight. They're not going to be able to they got to wait for all these people to run out of shoes before they can make shoes again. So there is this idea where if you don't leave it up to this, Benjamin Franklin said, people need to be uncomfortable in their poverty so that they can get out of the poverty. So, being somebody who's young, how long have you been out of college, John?
About a little over 2 years.
Okay, so 2 years. So when you were in college, were you around a lot of liberals? I mean, were there a lot of people that had this progressive worldview that, hey, well, it's the Democrats that want to help people. The Republicans don't, which is not true, by the way. But how did you combat that?
Yeah, so I encountered that a lot. I majored in communications, then I picked up a second major in philosophy. So I took a lot of social and political philosophy courses and certainly didn't encounter a lot of leftist liberal thought in those courses. And I welcomed it. I knew why I believed what I did. And I think the challenge was good to help solidify why I believed what I did.
Yes.
So I didn't look at it as a bad thing. I looked at it as an opportunity. Okay, this is a great way for me to better understand what I believe and better articulate that whenever I'm questioned by someone that may disagree with me. Now, the same can't be said for everyone. A lot of people, when they hear a professor talk, they're going to take their word for it. They're not going to go fact check. They're not going to go look for themselves. Is this really true? Or is there a better option?
Right.
Because socialism, it may sound great on paper, but when you start reading and you really look at what all that entails, it's not going to result in the best society possible for all individuals.
Yeah, I think socialism looks great on a chalkboard, looks great on paper. The only way it works is if you have perfect human beings.
And we're not.
Yeah.
So it doesn't work.
Yeah. And Milton Friedman said many times, there's that Donahue clip that goes around the YouTube about angels. Show me, where are these angels that are going to govern the affairs of men in your utopia, in your socialist system? And I think that's what so many people on the left, especially as we've pushed God out of public life, are having to deal with. The fact that a lot of people want to be perfect. They have this quest for perfection, but they don't understand that, first of all, that's not who we are naturally as we're born into this world. So talk about, has your faith, does your faith in a higher power, does that shape your political opinions, as well?
I think that's the core of what shapes my beliefs. It all stems from my belief in God, that we do have these inalienable rights that God has given us, and we are to protect those not only for ourselves but for other individuals. I was just reading the other day, Margaret Thatcher had a quote one time, people are always concerned about getting a grant, getting a government handout, but in reality we should rely on each other, not the government, to help us when we're in need. And I think that's where my Christian faith comes in. I'm not supposed to go seek help from the government. I'm supposed to seek help from my fellow neighbor, and I'm supposed to offer help whenever someone is struggling that I know.
Yeah.
So I think there's a reliance that we need to have on each other rather than the government, and I think that stems a lot from my Christian beliefs, and that's, I think, why we see conservative Christians donate more to charity than any other group in the United States.
Yeah.
I think it stems from that idea.
You raised some really good points. Again, we're talking with John Williams. This is a young conservative segment. Yeah, and I've heard this said before. A lot of churches today, they believe that they themselves, failed by not taking care of the poor enough that made these government programs spring up. Now, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. I really don't, because I think that, I think there's some truth to that. But I think now, when it comes to, because there are ministries that are growing, there are churches that are growing. There are studies from the Heritage Foundation that will tell you that poverty is not it's not just a material issue. That oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, people in poverty have a lot of other stuff going on in their lives, like really just a fundamental breakdown in their relationships, whether it's family relationships or whatever. But now we do have a situation where, because these government programs for people who don't truly need it are so massive, it does work against the church, because or charitable programs where the charities can be close and right next to these people, and they can start to try to correct some of those other problems that have nothing to do with just simple lack of material possession. Where the government looks at somebody and says, "Oh, you lack material needs. Okay, well, how old are you? When's your birthday? How much money you make a year? Okay, here it is. You're getting a check every month, regardless of what you do with that check, regardless of how you behave." Versus somebody who actually cares, like you meet someone on the street, or you have a friend that's going through a hard time. Well, maybe that friend has done some really bad stuff. Maybe there's a reason that they're in the spot that they're in. Maybe they need to stop doing a behavior. Maybe they're caught in a vice. Maybe they're not loving their family the way they should. And when you have that personal charity, now we're closer to the situation, and we can now remove it if somebody is just refusing to change some of the things that may have led to their circumstances.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
now we have a situation where the government is actually making it harder, for people to not change their behavior.
Yeah, they're hampering they're creating another barrier for them to get over. It's kind of like you can give a man a fish, or you can teach a man how to fish. And if you teach a man how to fish, they're gonna be set for the rest of their life. But if you just give them a fish every day, they're gonna be relying on that instead of knowing how to do it themselves.
Yeah. What moving forward? What do you think is your, what's your number one hope for the country, for the state of Arkansas? I mean, we got the 2020 elections. Yeah. What are you looking for?
Well, for the state of Arkansas, I would like that we finally elect some legislators that have a spine, that are going to stand up for the everyday American, that will actually stand for the conservative beliefs that they campaigned on of lower taxes, limited government, and more individual freedom. That's what I would like to see going forward in the 2020 and 2022 election. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. Hopefully, more people are waking up to realize that just because you got an R behind your name doesn't mean you're actually conservative. So we got to really vet our candidates, make sure that they're a true conservative, and they're going to stand up for our beliefs down in Little Rock instead of giving in to lobbyists and fall into corruption themselves.
You mentioned higher taxes. So do you think, have you heard the news that taxes are going up?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's one. It infuriates me, and every Arkansan should be just as bad as me that our taxes are going up, and that we've been lied to by our representatives and our senators that campaigned on lower taxes, on ensuring that we have a smaller government. But when you raise taxes, you're inevitably going to also create a larger government. They go hand in hand. More money for the government's going to grow larger, and so. Arkansan citizens need to wake up and realize that they've been lied to by their state legislators.
Wow. John Williams, young conservative, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much
for
coming on. Absolutely. Folks, we'll have a YouTube video up of this specific interview if you want to share it with your friends. It'll be up at conduitnews.com. Go to the YouTube channel and click the little button to subscribe and the little bell to receive notifications. John, we really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Folks, we're going to take a break. Back in a minute.